What's going on, everyone? And welcome to another episode of Writing Friction. And as always, today's guest is pretty cool. Everyone say hello to Mateo Askaripour. How are you, Mateo?
I'm doing well, man. You described me as pretty cool, so we're starting off on a good foot. Thank you.
Well, that is a bottle of whiskey behind your shoulder. I'm still trying to figure it out. Or is it apple juice?
It's whiskey.
Okay.
Apple juice would have been cooler. I actually don't drink. This is that's why this bottle is still here.
Okay.
Yeah. I got it when I did drink, but I never actually cracked it open because I thought that it'd get better with age. But then it just, we missed each other. So now this is just for guests.
You know what gets better with age? Not drinking as you get older.
Seriously, man. Yeah, I don't have hangovers anymore. I got a lot more energy.
Yeah.
It's great.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not a huge drinker. I mean, for all intents and purposes, I live in San Francisco, so I do what people do here. I smoke weed. But like with alcohol, it's just kind of like, yeah, man, as I get older, we were talking before the podcast, I guess we're around the same age, as I get a little older, dude, the more I can't wake up and do it. I mean, we were talking before, you're in Brooklyn, I grew up in Jersey, so we grew up hanging around New York City, and drinking in New York City is a different kind of culture, I think, than drinking in other cities.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, so I've spent some time in SF, and it's definitely nowhere nearly as aggressive as it is in New York. It's like an identity, actually, because before I fully stopped drinking, I did like a dry January. Okay. And I remember people were looking at me and people were saying things like, what's wrong? Do you have a problem? And people were a lot more uncomfortable by me not drinking rather than getting blackout drunk at a bar. They're like, we'd rather you being like super inebriated, so that just opened my eyes up to things. But it's definitely different here in New York.
Oh yeah, for sure. And so you were saying before you were born and raised in Long Island.
Yes, sir. Yep.
Yeah. I'm from Jersey. I mean, I feel like being from that part of the country, man, it just makes us something, not necessarily in a good way or a bad way, but it makes us a little different. Before you got into writing, I mean, what were you doing leading up to that? I mean, what were you doing as a kid? I mean, were you living outside? I mean, what were your parents like? Were they just like, get the hell out of the house, do your own thing? Were you kind of free roaming?
Yeah. So I have 3 older brothers, 1 younger brother. There's a lot of men in our family, and it was very much so, go outside, don't get in trouble. Be respectful. My mom, she's from Jamaica. My father's from Iran. Like they're straight up. I got this shirt I actually bought from an LA company, born of an immigrant, right? But I'm born of 2.
Kind of, I guess, life in the big city.
Life in the big city. Yeah, there you go. So, my parents were working hard. I grew up with my grandmother, though. She's the one who taught me how to read. She was an English teacher back in Jamaica. So there was like some supervision, but there was also just a ton of freedom, like go out, have fun. It was unsupervised. I don't think my parents typically knew what my brothers and I were doing at different times, for better or for worse. But home life was very stable. My mom, especially, is a big reader. She's a nurse. My dad worked for a company where he basically was like a courier in the beginning when he got to the city, and then he rose up and became like a head of shipping before the company went bust. So extremely, large emphasis on work ethic and that immigrant mentality of we need to make it in this country, and I want to better our situation for our children so that you can then prosper for your own children, right? Because that's generational wealth. It's no accident, and I grew up middle class, right? But hopefully, if I play my cards right, I can live a righteous life where I am wealthy, spiritually and mentally and emotionally, and then also financially to be able to pass on wealth to future generations, even if they're not my kids, right? I don't even know if I'm going to have kids, man.
Same here.
So yeah, life was go outside. It was a lot of freedom. My brothers and I all have different personalities. I think I was the one who focused most seriously in school, right? Because I thought that was a path. I thought that was a path for me, get good grades, play a bunch of sports, go to college, get good grades there, graduate, go into law or politics or something like that, and then make a dent. Even though,
was that something? I mean, but did you want to do law or politics, or that was just something you thought you needed to do?
Yeah, it's funny. I wanted to, right? Mm-hmm. There was a part of my life when I was like, I want to be a politician one day, and the best way to do that, I think, is to go to law school. Which, right, there's no main or surefire way to success in any field, creatively or non-creatively. Even though you could argue that all fields, do incorporate some semblance of creativity. But yeah, that was the path that I was taking. Then in college, it changed. But growing up as well, I grew up on Long Island, and after like fourth grade, all of my friends were white, right? Mm-hmm. So it was that story of where like you're the only black dude or black woman or black person in your classes, mm-hmm. In the people that you hang out with, whether it's due to socioeconomic reasons or because of the fact that I played soccer, right? And on my travel soccer team, I was the only black kid. So there was a lot of that going on as well, a lot that I had to unlearn over time. But what I'll say about that area and that region of the States, Long Island specifically, the best thing about it is the nature. And I lost that for a while, right? And I think we're going to talk about when I was at a tech startup and I lost many things, or I forgot many things. And when I was coming back out of it, nature has just always been a go-to and a best friend since.
I'm trying to hold in the laughter. When people think of Long Island, they don't think of nature. But you're right. If you're living in the island of Manhattan, it's hard to get nature. I mean, Long Island's, people think of New Jersey as a complete dump. Yet it's called the Garden. It's called the Garden State, right? There's
similar to Long Island, Jersey Shore. You got the same type of people, man. We know these people.
I'm telling you right now. I'm Jewish, and growing up, Christmas in my house. My father's Catholic, my mom's Jewish. Growing up, Christmas in our house was my mother and 50 Jews from Long Island filling up the house. Very funny, very funny. So as a kid, before I guess maybe before you were thinking about becoming a politician or a lawyer, were you reading a lot as a kid? Were you doing any kind of artistic endeavors, like in your teen years, music or anything like that?
Yeah, so I was definitely reading a lot. I was one of those kids that got excited about Scholastic book fairs. I'd get like, I don't know how much it was, man. You get $1.
Do those?
I have no idea, but you get like $1. You can get a couple books, maybe like a cool gadget from the magazine. I love that, man. I wasn't reading anything crazy when I was a kid. When I was younger, I was reading like Clifford, Dr. DeSoto, Frog and Toad, or whatever those crazy guys were.
I did a lot of Goosebumps.
So I was like getting into Goosebumps a little bit, but I read this series called Left Behind that scared the shit out of me. I don't know if you're familiar with Left Behind, but it's like what happens after the rapture, and like when like half the earth is gone or whatever, and you're waiting for Jesus to come back. I grew up in a household where, right, you're talking about your pops was Catholic, your mom was Jewish. My mom was and is a serious Christian, and my father grew up in Iran as a Muslim, but after a certain point, he didn't really care all that much, So us growing up, and this is very core to my cultural identity, we were just raised as like a bunch of black boys, and with strong Caribbean ties, where we would go to Jamaica once a year, once every couple of years.
You would travel to Jamaica as a kid?
Yeah, I mean, that's how it is in a lot of immigrant households, regardless of, I believe, your socioeconomic background. Like, if your parents are, fresh off the boat, or they've been in the country for a while and they care about their origins, they're going to make sure that you're connected to it through the food, through language in some way. But that's the thing. My mom was all about that, right? We grew up as very Jamaican, very black Jamaican. My father, he didn't give a shit really about telling us about Iran or anything like that. And it was really me, out of a lot of my brothers, that asked him questions and was like, "What's up, man? Like, what's this side? Like what? How did you grow up?" And I think that, without going too deeply into it, he had experienced a lot of trouble when he was a kid, a lot of familial things, a lot of a serious disruptive atmosphere. So I think that he was just like, I'm going to leave it in the past and allow my wife to really imbue her culture onto my children. But yeah, man, so I was a big reader. I hesitate to say that I was writing a lot, but I was writing. I'd write stories here and there. Like, I remember at 10, I wrote a whole series about, it's sort of dark, but about what life would be like if I died. Okay. And I wrote like a series. Yeah, but it ended up being like super paranormal, where I was in hell hanging out with the devil. Shit was wild. And I played violin. So I was musically inclined. I had my brothers bumping a lot of Wu-Tang, a lot of Nas.
Were you playing violin as part of like a school orchestra?
Yeah, I was in a school orchestra in 4th grade, and then I got out of it in like 10th or 11th. But yeah, like I said, my brothers super into hip hop, so that was trickling down to me. But my mom is bumping Beres Hammond, Bob Marley, and the Wailers, all these types of people. So there was a good amount of creativity and like do what you want and figure it out. But that was lost at a certain point in my life, especially when I became embedded in a tech startup. There was none of that. It was just me and this startup, and I was all in. And at the time, I thought that I was having the time of my life until I wasn't. And then creativity and writing became an outlet. And that's how this all unfolded, man. That's how I'm talking to you now, starting in that journey.
Most definitely. All right. Well, yeah. So let's get there, because I kind of think we both have similar paths in a way.
Sure.
Before I moved to SF, I was working in Fort Lee, which if you just go over if you go over for people who don't know, if you leave Manhattan over the GW Bridge, the second you get into Jersey, that town is called Fort Lee. And I worked at a building that was directly next to the Port Authority building. So, I mean, literally at the end, I was living in, 30 minutes west, driving every day. I'm 21, 22, 23. Going home, I'm having nightmares every night, dude.
Wow.
It was like a financial company. I'm like analyzing people's loans, and it was fucking awful.
Wow.
23, you see the guitar behind me. I've been playing guitar my whole life, playing in bands since I was 13. And got an offer to play in this band in SF. And I'm like, you know what? I was sitting at my desk. I was 23. And this is 10 years ago. Looking back on it now, I'm like, how did I give myself credit, because I was so green in the eyes to think I could do it. And I walk into my boss's office, and nice guy. And I'm just like, dude, long story short, I'm like, I'm going to move to SF. And 2 weeks later, I did. It would be 9 years of touring in bands till I started writing. But I was a heavy reader growing up. It was always something. It was the same with music. It was something I was like, if Bob Marley can play the guitar, why the fuck can't some chubby Jewish guy from New Jersey play the guitar? It's
why
the same
not?
thing, So when I've been my whole life reading books, I came to it in the way of just someone else did it before me. There's no reason why another chubby Jewish guy from New Jersey can't do it. When you kind of had that first idea of like, I'm going to do this, was that kind of what you were doing? Were you traveling? Were you sitting at a desk? Was it like an epiphany kind of moment, or were you stirring this idea for a while in your head?
Yeah, it was more compulsion. It was a byproduct of necessity, right? Because I was working at this tech startup, and again, it was great until it wasn't. And when
was that your first job out of college?
Yeah, I did like some weird government program out of college, and then
some weird government program.
Yeah. And then I started applying to a bunch of jobs.
Yeah.
This company really spoke to me because they were looking to teach people how to use the internet, and it felt like just very egalitarian, like giving power to the people with all these different apps that were coming about. And I applied, funnily enough, because I had wasn't really thinking about writing back then, but I applied to be a content writer, like for videos. And I made it to the second round interview, and then they said, you know what, we just found 2 guys that are perfect for it. So, we want you to intern here though. And it was all happening so quickly in the room. They brought in this other dude who I had seen online when I was researching the company. So there was a little bit of this halo effect where I was like, oh shit, you're this dude. And then he was real suave. He's like, calm down, man. You got the internship. And I was like, got the internship? It's like, I didn't even know that this was something I wanted.
Don't worry.
Right. Yeah. And bro, I mean, I graduated magna cum laude from NYU. Right. And I had friends that were making 65, 70. My parents were like, you're going to be the one. I had friends like, yeah, you're going to be the one. You're going to make money. So when I actually decided to work at this tech startup for free, they're like, what? Yeah. And not only that, I have to wake up at 4 or 5 a.m. 2 or 3 days a week and drive from Long Island because my mom, she is a nurse, and she's a nurse in the city. So she would drop me off at a friend's place at 6 or 7. I'd sleep for an hour or two, then go to this tech startup. And that happened for months. They wouldn't even give me $45 for a Metro card, man. It was wild. But I was really cutting my teeth. So working at that company, and I go from being an intern to then a couple months later, I was hired as the social media community manager. And then 7 months after that, I was tapped to start the sales team with the CEO. The company grew from 20 to 230 in 2.5, 3 years.
Real quick, what years are this? Because that makes a difference. Yeah. What years are this?
Thanks for calling that out, because I find that in some interviews, I'm throwing around a bunch of numbers and it starts turning to that meme with algorithms and shit flying by. So I've actually been hesitant to throw out numbers because it just causes confusion at times. But so I started at the company as an intern in October 2012.
Most definitely.
Right?
Yeah.
And I became community manager, I think on like Valentine's Day, like February 14th, right? 2013. I began getting paid like a month or two later, which is a weird gap. And then it was August 2013 that I was tapped to start this sales team with the CEO. Company grew, sales team grew from me to like 90 people. Flash forward, it is 2016 now. I'm 24. I'm making over 6 figures and I'm managing 30 people. And I was just burnt out emotionally and physically. I was disillusioned with sales in the startup world, and I didn't really care all that much about what we were doing, the mission of the company. So I began to open my eyes, and I said, I need an outlet. So I started to write. And I was just writing articles here and there. I was writing articles about sales. I was getting them, published. I was writing articles on a blog about anything and everything, just feeling myself out. But then May 21st, 2016 was when I started a novel, because I just had so much energy and I had so much pent up angst and frustration about the company I was working in. I just felt trapped. And the last thing I like to feel is trapped. So I began writing, and I was figuring out what it meant to be a writer. I was writing in coffee shops. I was writing in libraries. I was writing in the morning. I was writing after work, just like taking cues from movies and books about what it means to be an artist, right? To figure out what that meant for me. And it took me a while to figure out what that meant for me. But anyway, I banged out this book in like 4.5 months. And to go back to your original question,
banged out's the right word. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. I was coming from this world where I was mostly respected by people in this company and this vacuum that we were in, but also beyond the company. I had friends, people that were in sales in New York City that would come to me for advice. I would do speaking engagements. Yeah. So I felt like I was hot, So to answer your question directly, I was like, people write books. They are born just like I am. They're going to die just like I am. They're a sack of skin and veins and blood and beauty. But why can't I do this? Mm-hmm. So I went into it extremely confident. Again, wrote this book in like 4.5 months. Got to Costa Rica after I quit my job.
Wait, real quick. I'm sorry. Hold on real quick. That first book.
Yeah.
When I started writing, the first thing that I taught myself was, again, I never took a creative writing class. Did you ever take a creative writing class?
I took I think like an intro creative writing senior in college, but I'm not formally trained by
most
any means.
definitely.
I don't have an MFA or anything.
Yeah. So what I did to teach myself in those that early stage, that I did the same thing. I banged out some crappy thing, but I created, just in my terminology, it's called word vomit, where it was just that first draft was just like, I just need to get it on the page. Teach yourself the discipline of getting it on the page first. Worry about if it's any good later. When you did that first, whatever that ended up being, what were you kind of just like, you were so in the moment, you were just taking it away? Were you editing? Was there doubt? What were you feeling when you did that first thing?
My brother, I was not intentional in any way of like, let me just word vomit. I was like, I probably didn't say to myself, I'm going to write the next masterpiece, but I was like, I'm going to write something wild and people are going to love it. And I'm going to talk about
when I say word vomit, I don't mean the quality of the work. I mean the quantity of the work. So words, just simply getting it on the page. That's what I meant.
Sure.
Yeah.
I don't even know though, if I was conscious of that. I knew that I wanted to write. I knew that it felt better than anything I'd done in so long, that I forgot what time it was when I was writing, that I felt the master of my domain, and I felt like I could actually create something worthwhile. So again, I wrote that book. It was like 94,000 words in 4.5 months. I got a one-way ticket to Costa Rica because I had a little money.
94,000. I like that. You know the exact number.
Yeah. Well, I remember numbers, man. Numbers that matter to me. And when I went to Costa Rica, right, I got out of the States. Again, coming from this world of sales, I was like, I'm going to hit up the presidents of all these literary agencies, the best literary agencies in the world. I see there's advice not to call these people up unless you're nice on the phone. I'm nasty on the phone. I'd call these people up.
I love it.
I'd call these people up and they say, why are you calling? Hang up, right? So I pitched the work out and I had no idea what I was doing. So when I got rejections that weren't even form rejections, but it felt like it was a real rejection from big people that were like, no, pass, or thanks, whatever. I was like, whoa, I'm legit. I'm getting rejections now. I wasn't upset. I was like, hell yeah, this is real. So,
and that's the way to be, but that's the way to be about it.
you have to, right? I think I quoted this once. I believe it's Winston Churchill who said that the definition of success is going from one failure to another with enthusiasm. And what I don't lack at all is enthusiasm, right? So with that book, I ended up getting a little feedback from like a friend of a friend who's in the writer world, and she told me like to cut part of my query. Someone else was like, yo, maybe cut this first chapter. So I ended up getting 9 agents who requested to read it. And January 2017, when I got those 9 requests, partial and full for that first novel, and I was like, damn, this is about to happen.
Had you brought it to an editor? Were you editing this first piece of? Yeah,
exactly. Bro, it was unedited. It was completely unedited. I didn't know what I was doing. So, but I had a crazy amount of like ignorance and confidence, right? So, but I had these 9 agents, and I was like, yeah, this is happening. And then what happened? The pitch was good, right? Because I know how to pitch, but the writing didn't stand up. These people were like, yo, there's mad energy, but you need to work on a lot, like plot and structure, characters, all this stuff. And all those 9 agents, they either replied and rejected, or they didn't even get back to me, right? Which I feel like if an agent requests your work, it's completely disrespectful for them to not follow up. Now, just ignoring your query, fine. They get hundreds. But to request it, that's disrespectful. And
I never got that far. Yeah, I only got rejections. Interesting you say that. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you will, right? So it's just like, this is just a whole nother conversation about gatekeepers and disrespect in the literary world and just power. But my point is that first novel, it didn't go anywhere, rightly so. And I also had agents telling me like, hey, this is young adult. Your character is 17. You should age him to 16. Telling me all this stuff that they probably thought was good advice, but it's also a little ridiculous, right? You need to write what you want to write, irrespective of genre or the boxes that something is placed in, even though you definitely do need to package it up in a way to sell it and then to market it. So that first book, nothing happened. I don't want to just like talk the listener's ear off, but I kept traveling, right? I got back to the States. Sorry, I was in the States for like January, February. And then I started doing some consulting with tech startups so that I could make money. And I said, you know what? I don't need to stay in the States. So I got a one-way ticket to Bali. At first, I was like, Bali? I'm not going to Bali. That's like Julia Roberts, middle-aged white woman, eat, pray, love shit. But then I was like, yo, I don't know these Balinese, these Indonesian people. Who am I to Yeah, people live there, right? That's such a egocentric, like Western specific mentality, right? You're propping up a Western person or a Western piece of art to represent a whole place of beautiful brown people. So I went.
It's like My Big Fat Greek Wedding.
Exactly, right? It's just ridiculous. So I went and I was reading this book called Plot and Structure that I got off of Amazon. You're frozen, but now you're not. And I got this book off Amazon by James Scott Bell. And I was reading that. I was reading like a chapter a day on Bali. And I was studying it religiously because one agent said that if you work on your plot and structure, I think you can pull this book together. So I was working on that, man. I was reading. I was also writing like travel articles and selling them for like 25, 40 bucks, just generating confidence. Got back to the States eventually, edited that second book, which was it was like a rewrite of the first, edited with a friend. Nothing happened. No representation. Had some agents look at it, but nothing. So then I was at creative rock bottom.
Same agents as the previous book. Were you working with those same people the second time around?
Some were from that first batch. Some were new. Yeah. I was also better understanding how to pitch. Like I was moving away from the extreme of like being like shooting wildly into the dark, and then knowing that who you pitch is as important as how you pitch and what you're pitching. It's honestly more important than what you're pitching and how you're pitching it. Because if you don't have the person this is going to resonate with, you're wasting the email, you're wasting the query, and you're probably going to be, decreasing your energy levels depending on who you are and how well you take rejection.
Yes.
So nothing happened with that. Creative rock bottom, November 2018. Stephen King's On Writing helped me get out of a rut, helped me recontextualize. It's cliche, brother. Happened to you too?
But it is and it's not, because other authors have talked about it, but at the same time, that's like, I'm going to be doing a pod. You've never heard of this guy. I'm doing a podcast. His name's Paul Zollo, and he wrote a book called Songwriters on Songwriting. And it's just him interviewing Bob Dylan, Joni Mitchell. You list everyone. And we're all human, right? So Stephen King, for people who don't know, wrote a book called, and it's the only Stephen King book I've read. And it's called On Writing, and it's half bio-ish, half craft. And he tells you, he talks about the rejection, he talks about these things. And for anyone who hasn't read it, I mean, yeah, there's invaluable lessons in that book for sure. I'm stoked that we both have, yeah, for sure.
Invaluable, brother. So it's like, and November 2018, right? I read Stephen King's On Writing, and it was then that I had an idea. And the idea was honestly somewhat far from what the book ended up being, right? This idea, it was also because I was heavily into documentaries, and I was watching this doc on the Black Panthers, and then I was like, yo, what if I write a book about a group of elite Black salespeople who end up becoming terrorists and just blowing up a bunch of buildings? And I was like, yeah. I was thinking all these ideas. I was like, oh, they're going to be called this and this, that, and the other. And then when it came time for me to actually begin the book, when I began it on January 8th, 2018, I had refined the idea.
Yeah, you know the exact
I remember the date, baby. Like, the idea was refined. My goals were clearer. And while I didn't know the exact shape that the book was going to take, while it definitely wasn't outlined, I was ready to write the book that I wanted to write for the people I wanted to serve in the way that I wanted to write it. And, I probably mentioned this already. Did I want an agent and did I want to get published? Yes, but they were no longer priorities 1 and 2. The main priority was writing a book that felt true to me, that felt true to the reality of America and the world that we live in. And I just got after it after that, man.
It's interesting. I mean, you say that the agents weren't the priority, but I'd imagine they weren't the priority because you had already gone through that process before with the other books you were writing, right? I mean, you had already been through like the trenches of dealing with all that stuff. And so going forward with that second book, so now you have this idea of, well, first off, did that idea the entire idea come to you in one split moment? Or was it kind of like, I had this idea and then you worked on it and you kind of figured it out? I mean, how did that process go?
Yeah, sorry. This is the third book, right? The second book, it was before. It was before I even read Stephen King's On Writing. But the idea just came to me. Ideas. I'm not wanting for ideas, to be honest. I get ideas all the time, and I write them down all the time. And I respect them. I respect any idea that comes to me. I am never judging myself in the act of creation. I'm never judging an idea saying that's stupid. What I do is I'll write it down, and then maybe days or weeks later, I'll continue to jot notes. And if it's for a novel, and I'm still thinking about it months later, I say, this is an idea that I should pursue, right? But if I'm no longer jazzed about it months later, then I know that this is not something that I'm going to want to spend years on, from beginning the writing process to when it finally comes out to then having to talk about it probably for a year after that.
Yeah, I mean, the cycle of a book, and we were talking just before we were recording this, the cycle of a book, it's a little, there's the music world and the book world, right? From my point of view, the cycle of a book is a lot different than the cycle of a record. With books, I mean, obviously the shelf life of a book is a lot longer than music. I feel like, music, it's like you got the album, when's the next album coming, let's kind of go. But you got to work that book. I mean, you're spending years and years and years just writing the fucking thing. And then once you write it, it's got to go to the editor. And then once it gets edited, it's got to go through this. And then once it goes through that, it's a long process. Can you kind of talk about, I mean, you're kind of in that process right now, right? Can you kind of dive into, was that what you expected? I mean, are you already kind of like, let's just get this book, I'm over it. I mean, like, what's the next fucking
just to touch on something that I wanted to directly answer your last question. By the time I got to Black Buck, right, I wasn't disillusioned by literary agents or anything like that. So this is just part of the game. But I am doing a disservice to myself in the work if I'm just trying to please them.
Yeah.
So that's where the shift happened, right? And I have no ill will. I'm not. You have people that get really turned off by traditional publishing, and then what do? They either give up or they move to self-publishing. And it's no knock to them, but you have a lot of self-published authors, at least that I've seen, that have this huge chip on their shoulder. Like, yo, if it didn't work out, it didn't work out. I'm the type of person that say, don't blame other people, blame yourself. That's the way that I just am, though, right? So in terms of the timeline and how long it takes things, I knew that things would take a while. When it comes to writing itself, I am a person who says write as soon as possible. If it takes you 6 months to write a first draft, great. If it takes you 6 years, fine, go at your own pace, right? Anthony Burgess supposedly wrote A Clockwork Orange in 3 weeks. So it's like, you got to go at your own pace. But when it came
to another Anthony Bourdain wrote his book before working in the kitchen. So yeah.
I didn't even know that. Well, Kitchen Confidential.
Well, first off, have you read it?
No, I read his 1999 essay, Read This Before Eating, which I thought was incredible.
I've talked about this book before. Kitchen Confidential, it's like a sleeper.
It's very rock and roll. You'd like it.
Kind of looks over it, but man, that fucking book is, I mean, it's quoted all the time. If you have anyone in the friends in the restaurant industry, I mean, like you never eat fish on a Monday. I mean, there's so many quotes from that book. Yeah. But yeah, he wrote, I mean, he talks about it, I think, in the first 10 pages of the book. He's like, I'm writing this, I'm sitting in my kitchen. It's, 2 p.m. or whatever. I got to go to the fucking, and he talks about it. But yeah, you got to do it. You just got to do it.
It sounds like he may have, this is just my ignorance, he may have taken the first few pages of that and sold it to the New Yorker for that essay that I've read, because it has the same vibe. I've had Kitchen Confidential on my list for a while, R.I.P. Tony Bourdain.
Yeah.
But in terms of writing, I tell people you got to write at your own pace, but I'm someone who wants to, complete something as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
But there are pros and cons, because through me completing something as quickly as possible, not hesitating, not judging myself, then I have to do maybe more drafts than other people, right? Like Black Buck, probably like 10 or 11 drafts from when I first wrote it to what's hitting the shelves, in a couple of weeks. So there's that. But in terms of the music industry, right? I study the music industry very closely. I'm obsessed with hip hop specifically, but I respect all forms of music. And there is a difference where I've been with people that will just bang out a song in like 30 minutes or like an hour session, from someone making the beat to someone, spitting on it, and then the song getting ready to go get mixed and mastered, right? And there are many people in the music industry that they have one song and they get on. It doesn't mean that they don't deserve to get on, right? Because then they have to maintain that, and you can see who's a one-hit wonder, right? Rebecca Black, Friday. I think that was one of the first songs that hit 1 million.
Dude, oh my God, I remember the first time I heard that song. Oh
right?
My God.
Bro, where did Rebecca Black go? I'm in love with the Coco. OT Genesis is still out here, but where after that? You see what I'm saying? So in the literary industry, there are definitely still one-hit wonders, but it's much harder, I think, for people to just pick up, drop something, and move forward, right? If you're not going the self-publish route. Because inherently in this industry, the way it's set up, you write a book, you edit it, maybe you get an agent, you edit it together, then, if you're lucky, you sell it, not lucky, but, if opportunity meets preparation, you sell the book. And then after that, it's like 1.5 to 2 years. And I'm like, damn, this takes a long time. But it's because they have so many other books that they have slated to come out. Number two, the book needs to be edited again multiple times. Then it needs to be proofread, copy edited. You have to go back and forth on designs. There's so much that goes on behind the scenes. And I think that for some people, like the end user, I'd say, coming from, the startup world, the reader doesn't really give a shit, and that's okay. But then there are some who do and understand that this is a long process.
But that's not
a book is a book.
But that's not their job, the end user, the reader, to give a shit. I don't have to give a shit when I pick up a book and know that all that work went into it. I don't give a shit. I want to be entertained as a reader. Now, as a writer,
depends on what type of reader you are, though.
That's what I'm saying. But we're not a blanket term, but most, and not even most, but just readers in general. There's all kinds of readers, but they're not buying a book, looking and thinking about, oh man, how many, copy edits did this go through? How many all those kinds of things. But I want to go back to the music thing you were talking about, making beats and stuff like that. And I say it over and over, with music, you have that immediate reaction. I say it all the time. So, if someone makes a beat, someone plays a lick, someone plays it, whatever, you're going to like it. You're going to like it, or you're not going to like it, right? It's like it kind of hits with you immediately. But with literature, I mean, we have to get people on that first page, that first sentence, that first paragraph, and hook them and kind of keep them, right?
Yeah. Keeping in line with that, man, it's if I go dun 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 dun, you know it, right? Yo, we don't really have the same thing in books. You might have writers that have put out a handful of books and they have a signature, but how cool would it be if you read a type of sentence and you're like, yo, that's this woman. That's this dude. That's this person. How cool would that be?
And I've thought about this before with, like the packaging of books or like selling of books. I have this dream from if I could get this novel published that I'm writing, this rock and roll book. Like I would love the packaging to come with a concert poster of the book. So like the art form, like if it's a dope cover along with the book, like you open it up and inside of whatever, there's a foldable concert poster of like, the band or whatever, I won't get. But I think there's ways to engage people more and to create your own kind of style in the literature world. People are doing it obviously on social media, right? Twitter and Instagram, and they kind of, there's personas and there's things like that. You and I are just meeting. Are you big into the social? I mean, are you Twitter, Instagram? Are you in that world?
I mean, Michael, you are speaking to someone that is fully in line with what you're saying. And let me explain, right? So again, I'm coming to this as someone who has a business background. I know some about marketing, right? But beyond that, again, just being a child of the music world and again, specifically hip hop, I've seen people, and I don't even want to say brand themselves, but their art is truly an extension of their personality, and their art isn't just limited to a 10-track album or something like that. It's merch, it's art, like art that they commission, graphics. It is just anything that you can imagine. So
clothing?
Me coming in, man, clothing. Look at this hat. This is a black buck hat. I got a black. You know what I'm saying? So the point is, real quick, is that I told myself I don't care what the ROI is. I am going to commission art. So I've been dropping, at this point, I've dropped like 6 pieces of art that I've commissioned, and then a poster, all on like Instagram and through Twitter, just to engage readers before the book is even out. And I told myself, I don't care if this leads to sales or anything like that. This is an extension of my brand. I've shot videos that I haven't even posted yet. Yeah. I've rapped a cappella. I got a Black Buck freestyle, bro. This isn't like some crazy calculated formula for like, I just got to hit people with this, that, and the other. It's because I wanted to do it. It's because I wanted to inject my own flavor into the process artistically. So it's super in line with what you were saying.
It's interesting. I mean, I feel like forever, we're a little younger, but I feel like forever authors were always kind of kept behind, this. You only knew the picture on the back of the book, right? And like the 3 interviews they did with the New York Times and whoever. I'd like to see, and I'm not really seeing it yet. Maybe this podcast could be the beginning of something, but in the literary world, and you're seeing it through social media. I'm not going to name any specific authors, but I can look at 4 on my bookshelf that have released books in the last like 3-4 years who are very active on like Twitter.
Yeah, I know them too.
Yeah, and they've created a persona, whether or not that's who they are. I don't know who it's like the Billy Joel song, "The Stranger," right? We all have a face. But before I forget that thought, I mean, we're writing for a new generation. We're writing for a new attention span. We're writing for all these things. And I feel like as an author, you need to not only be a good writer, but nowadays you have to be, there has to be other things to it, a flavor, like you said. And again, it could be commissioning art. It could be, making hip hop videos. Like I could record a 3-minute rock song and try to promote my book that way. And
you should. That's a great idea.
Again, the poster idea, there's things that art is, I think of writing as an art form the same way as as music, as painting, as everything.
You're starting with a blank page, 1000%.
Every single thing, man. A painter starts with a blank canvas. Even though I'm looking at a commission painting I have, and even though that painter knew exactly what was going to happen, he still started with nothing. Going forward, once this book is out, I mean, right now, obviously, you can't do book tours and things like that. What are going to be the things that, that you are going to be engaging with? Are you going to do readings? Have you ever done a reading before, actually?
Yeah.
I did my first ever reading 3-4 weeks before the world shut down. Yeah.
How was it?
How was it?
Yeah.
It would have been a disaster if I had not had a conversation before with another author. And what I mean by that was I had 4 or 5 again, no one taught me how to do this. I was planning on reading 4 or 5 pages. And he looked at me. He was like,
sounds like a lot.
He's like, my man, you're going to put every single person to sleep. He's like, that's not how this works. And what he did was he took a pen. He was like, show me what you want to read. X'd out a paragraph. He's like, move this paragraph here. He's like, it doesn't have to be in chronological order. It doesn't have to, you don't have to read, it doesn't have to be linear. He's like, you want to do 2-3 minute chunks. In reality, that's about a page and a half. He's like, record yourself before you do it, which I did. I have a tendency to speak pretty fast. I'm from New Jersey. I had to slow myself. I had to hear myself, right? Yeah, it was a learning. And then you get up there and you have to actually read in front of people.
Yeah. It's
yeah, it was crazy, man. I loved it. I mean, have you done it before or no?
Yeah. The thing is, and I'm not going to go deep into this answer. I'm backtracking once again in terms of trying to answer more of the previous question.
Yeah.
But it's important to take into consideration that depending on the book that you're publishing and how much support you have, but even if you don't have that much support, you have a team, right? And there are going to be people that want to weigh in on the flavor that you're looking to inject. And then there are going to be people who don't care. So all I'll say on this, right, because this could be a 2-hour-long conversation, is you have to stick to your vision, and provided that you like the people you work with and you respect them, even if you don't, you have to work with them either way, right? And they're working to push your book out. And I'm fortunate, I think I mentioned this earlier, I love every single person that I work with, especially for my publisher. You have to be able to articulate the why of what you're doing, or at least sell them on it, depending on your situation, right? The people that I work with, I have full freedom, and they know that they're not going to really stop me from doing anything. However, I take their opinions into consideration. So maybe I won't release something at a certain time. Now, answering the question that you just asked, yeah, I've done readings. So the first time I did a reading was in 2018. I'm part of this great group called the Rhode Island Writers Colony.
Oh, nice.
And it was a colony. Yeah, it was a writers colony that became a family when I didn't know that I really needed one, right? Because I was just writing alone. And I gave a reading in Providence. The first time I've ever done it. My name was on a poster. It was so cool. And this guy came up to me afterwards. He said, where can I buy your book?
Yeah.
I said, homie, buy my book. I just completed the second draft. I don't have an agent. This book, you know what I'm saying? But
what were you reading from?
I was reading from Black Book. And back then it was called something else. And I read just the beginning part. And then I as your friend or colleague was telling you, I skipped a couple hundred pages and then read a short part from another part.
Yeah.
Just to test. This was all an experiment for me. And I had to go on after my friend Jason Reynolds. And if you know, Jason Reynolds is one of the biggest writers out today.
Should we have him on
middle
the podcast?
Grade writer. Yeah, you should definitely reach out to him.
Cool.
He's one of a kind, and he's like the definition of a literary citizen. Anyway, so I went up there. Then this guy afterwards asked me where he could buy it, and it was just such a shot of confidence. I was like, a lay person thinks that my book could be real. So that was huge for me. And I've done other readings. But in terms of moving forward, what it seems to be that many authors are doing right now, especially authors that have a big backing, is they're going on a huge virtual tour run, where in their first week or first week and a half, they have 7 to 10 events. And unless the events are themed and really thought out, they're saying the same things over and over, right? And it's like this, there are no borders. You can have anyone joining these Zooms or whatever they're using. So what I'm going to do, and this is my publicist idea, and I loved it, is we're just going to have 3 main events. There's going to be an East Coast event, there's going to be a West Coast event, and there's going to be an event specifically with a Black-owned bookstore. And there will be a lot of other events, like in terms of IG Lives and live interviews and book festivals and conferences. But as for launch events, we're just having 3. And there's going to be a different flavor. I can't give it all away, man. But I came in wanting to do these launch events, even virtually, right? They're all going to be virtual. I wanted to do them in a crazy way, right? And I was so on one side of the spectrum. And then after having conversations with my team, I was like, you know what? That my initial ideas might not be as suitable to the world that we're in today. So let me meet them in the middle. And where we are right now, I feel great. There's definitely going to be a reading. There's going to be Q&A. There's going to be conversation. The conversation partners aren't going to be people that people are used to. There's going to be like a celebrity. There's going to be a lot going on, brother. So yeah, I'm excited. And for me, it's just about doing something that feels good and delivering as new of an experience as I can, right? Because we're not going to get this time back, man. And I'm very cognizant of it.
Going forward, this book's kind of now going to be out in the world. What are you doing now? What's the game plan moving forward with, are you going to work on a new book? Are you going to kind of take it easy? Are you writing anything right now? What's your plan moving forward? And I'm the kind of dude, like, if I'm not working on something every single day, I have a panic attack. So like, what's your way about it?
I'm the same type. Yeah. I'm working on a new book. Nice. For sure. We got some stuff going on in Hollywood. I used to not say that because I was like, but now I'm just like, whatever. Like, people are going to know soon enough. So there's that. And yeah, brother, I'm always working as well, whether it's on something art related, whether it's like shooting videos related to the launch, these interviews. I'm always working, and I love it.
Dude, Mateo, this has been an absolute blast, man. Couple of quick questions at the end that I always do. First off, you said, social media. What's the handle? Where do people find you?
Ask Mateo, ASKMATEO. You can find me on Twitter and on Instagram with that.
Cool. And when the book comes out, where are you buying your books from? What's your favorite bookstore?
Whew, that's a good question, man. Because I was thinking about it yesterday.
More than one answer. You have to limit to just one.
I was like, I want to go around New York City and buy this book and then just hand it out to people. I've never been to, I think it's called the Lit Bar in the Bronx. And I definitely want to go all the way up there. Let me just make sure that I got
an actual bar.
I don't think it's an actual. Maybe I'm not sure. It's called the Lit Bar. It's in the Bronx. I haven't been there.
Okay.
And it's calling me right now.
Yeah.
Actually, it says It says, once upon a time, a girl from the Bronx had big dreams of opening an independent bookstore / wine bar right here at home.
Yeah.
So there you go. It's just calling me, bro. I haven't been there. I'm gonna go there. I'm going to go to McNally Jackson because I used to walk by, especially the Soho location, and literally stare through the glass, picturing my book there.
Oh, yeah.
This is before I had this book. I'm going to go to Housing Works. Housing Works is a great place. A lot of the money that they get from the sales of their books goes to helping people with HIV, people who are experiencing homelessness. Greenlight Brooklyn. Gonna go there. The one on Fulton and Flatbush. I've been to so many events, man. It goes on and on. I'm gonna go where I can, man. There's just so many Black-owned bookstores across the nation that I'm gonna be working with in partnership with. You got Loyalty in DC. You got Rachel Cargill's new bookstore that she set up in Akron, which is her hometown, bro. There's just an infinite amount of great places and bookstores and indies out there that I can't wait to work with.
Dude, I'm stoked for everything that's going to come in your future, man. I'm sure we'll talk again soon. I'm pretty sure.
We definitely will, yeah.
Dude, enjoy the rest of the day, man.
Thanks for your time, brother. You too.